Praise House Park is a design for a heritage memorial site competition for Scanlanville, a historic African American neighborhood in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. This project seeks to create a memorial for the culture and history of a people that have been exploited and often forgotten but are an integral thread in the weave of our nation. More importantly, it seeks to help us remember racism as a vestige from slavery, and to truly combat it we must learn to value each other equally and with empathy. It is a chance for people to connect with the history of the site and simultaneously experience respite through interaction with nature. 3 primary questions drove the design. How can the design celebrate the battles and triumphs of the community founders? How can the design offer homage to the region's cultural history? And, how can the design create a deeper shared understanding of Scanlanville?
I want Jesus to walk with me when I'm on my lonesome journey. Lord, I want Jesus. I want Jesus to walk with me. Well, I die the day now for tell Huna something about my ancestor them. I can feel the presence day the day with me now, because I know it'll watch over me. I grew up not knowing where I came from, or how I got here, and why am I being treated as less than a human. You know, our grandmother said, now the buckra children go there. And don't look buckra in the eye. So I can't go over there no for play with them buckra then. We knew that the whites were different, but we didn't really know why. So it was just another day in the life of a little Gullah girl. To walk with me. And they been ya on these hallowed and sacred grounds on this place we call Edisto Island, where I grew up. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Almost everybody that lived on this island were enslaved Africans, all Gullah people. And the island had nothing but plantation and all they calling the white gold, you know. The cotton and the rice and all the indigo. The enslaved Africans had to find a way to communicate. So that language was pretty much born here in America.
God tell us now y'all can eat all the trees of the garden. But the day you eat that tree in the middle of the garden, don't be day you die.
My generation is really the last generation to have direct contact with Gullah-speaking people, and Gullah was their only language.
You see a little red apple hanging on the tree?
And unless we pass it on to our children, then it will die out.
And Mom and Bob Taylor says,
He strip everything from her. All the children that snatch out the arm, carry the baby this way, the mare that way, the pear that way. And they mean they had no sense of family at all. We have to let our young people know about the struggle. We have to go all the way back to Africa, where it all began, so that they know whose back they're standing on. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my God and be free and be free.
The program of landscape architecture at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University engaged in the Designing Our History competition. The primary goal of the competition was to create a heritage-based public space in Scanlanville, a neighborhood within Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. The primary questions presented by the competition were organized into 3 categories. Memory. How can this park create a permanent record of Mr. Scanlon and the original families of the community? Can the design bridge modern sentiment and our inescapable history? Monument. In a neighborhood of large-scale houses, within a city full of historical markers and memorials of all scales, how can a small park stand out? What would create a memorable visitor experience? How can its focal point become an icon in a city crowded with icons? What elements of structure or lighting could make the park something drivers notice as they commute over our ancestral land from new suburbs to downtown Charleston? And nature. How can a planting palette and landscape design celebrate our history of curated but unconfined landscapes and shared or communal space in a city given over to the exclusive precision of gated formal gardens? The site resides in an outer coastal plain in a temperate deciduous forest biome. The deciduous forest regions are exposed to warm and cold air masses, which cause this area to have 4 seasons. The temperature varies widely from season to season with cold winters and hot, wet summers. The average yearly temperature is about 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The project is located at 5th Ave and Mathis Ferry Road in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. The site is approximately 0.58 acres and is currently zoned R1, low-density residential district. The regulations that apply within this district are designed to discourage unwarranted and blighting encroachments by limiting commercial use and prohibiting industrial use. The site is surrounded primarily by residential with Holy Trinity Ame Zion Church on the southern portion of the site. Many different kinds of trees, shrubs, and herbs grow in deciduous forests. Most of the trees are broadleaf trees such as oak, maple, beech, hickory, and chestnut. The majority of trees on the project site are live oak trees draped in Spanish moss. There are also several different kinds of plants like mountain laurel, azaleas, and mosses that live on the shady forest floor where only small amounts of sunlight get through. The program elements that are currently on the site are a bench, trash can, and a Scanlonville memorial plaque. There is also a sidewalk that runs along the south side of the site. British colonists landed on the coast of South Carolina in 1670 near the present-day location of Charleston. The natural harbor and many rivers provided protection and transportation routes for trade. The climate and soils of the Sea Islands afforded an excellent area for agriculture. Indigo was the colony's first cash crop before switching to rice and eventually long-strand Sea Island cotton, the profitable cultivation of which was not possible without the use of slave labor. The area was heavily damaged during the Civil War, and this, coupled with the subsequent end of slavery, forced South Carolinians to restructure their economy and society. Mount Pleasant is a large suburban town in Charleston. It is the 4th largest municipality and the largest town in South Carolina, and for several years was one of the state's fastest growing areas, doubling in population between 1990 and 2000. The estimated population in 2018 was 89,338. The site of Mount Pleasant was originally occupied by the Sioux people, an Algonquian language-speaking tribe. By 1721, 107 families were living in the area, including 400 whites and 637 slaves. As the area was developed for plantations, enslaved Africans and African Americans made up the chief labor force of the slave society, which led to the creation of the unique Gull culture. They and the following freedmen comprised a majority of the population through the 19th and early 20th centuries. The histories of the slaves who worked the low-country rice and indigo plantations of coastal South Carolina were often very different from those slave communities in other parts of the South who arrived via generations living in the West Indies and worked the large cotton estates of the inland Piedmont. More than 120,000 enslaved West Africans were brought in chains directly to the United States through the port of Charleston as part of the British transatlantic slave trade, which thrived in South Carolina from the late 18th through the early 19th centuries. Descendants in the traditional African American Gullah communities of Charleston County typically trace their ancestry to the mix of cultures where white rice planters often had a preference for slaves from rice-growing regions along with those from Africa's Windward Coast region including Angola, Senegambia, and Sierra Leone. Most Gullah lived in isolated plantation communities along the coastline, where slaves vastly outnumbered whites. This provided a sense of independence and made it easier for many to retain their African cultural and community traditions associated with language, dialects, foodways, oral history, religious practices, and tool making. Today, the Gullah descendants continue to lead a spiritual life that influences every aspect of their lives. They believe in the dual nature of the soul and spirit. In death, one's soul returns to God, but the spirit remains on earth to live among the individual's descendants. It is common for funerals to be ornate and for mourners to decorate graves using items that belong to the newly deceased. The Gullah people believe the spirit of their ancestors participates in their daily affairs and protects and guides them using spiritual forces. Other traditions practiced by Christian Gullahs include praise houses. Praise houses are small wooden buildings located away from the community where worshippers could freely express their faith and emotions. They were used to strengthen one's faith, examine new members, and provide spiritual guidance for the community. Scanlanville, now hemmed in by new homes, was once home to one of the area's most popular black beaches, Riverside Beach, from the 1940s through the 1960s, where jazz and R&B giants such as Duke Ellington, Count Basie, B.B. King and James Brown performed at the waterfront pavilion. Now all that remains of the beach is a historical marker across from Remley's Point Boat Landing. The newly emancipated Gullah, residents of Charleston County, like those in other parts of South Carolina, quickly realized land ownership was the key to political and possibly later, economic equality. While most freedmen lacked the individual capital to purchase property, a few enterprising groups in counties such as Charleston and Clarendon with large African American populations, banded together to form cooperative societies for the purchase of former white-owned plantation lands. The development of Scanlanville is one such enterprise. In 1868, freedman carpenter John Scanlon purchased the 614-acre Remley's plantation that was bordered by the Charleston Harbor and the Wando River. The property was previously owned by Paul Remley, who died in 1863. Scanlon founded the Charleston Land Company that allowed 100 African American men to pay $10 shares and purchase large tracts of land. The land was divided into 2-acre farm lots and half-acre town lots. By 1870, former slaves who desired to own land could purchase town or farm lots. The Charleston Land Company and the development of Scanlanville is one of 4 known cooperative ventures between African American freedmen. The site is located at the eastern entry of the original Scanlanville community plot. The Scanlanville Cemetery and Remley Point Boat Landing are both approximately 1 mile away from the project site. The project site was part of a racially tinged dispute between 2 nonprofit groups inadvertently started by the Mount Pleasant Town Council. All parties involved agreed that the overgrown and undeveloped half-acre that sits on Mathis Ferry Road at 5th Avenue should become a small park. But it won't be a park honoring a white businessman who died in 2016, as the Town Council and East Cooper Land Trust had intended. Instead, the land will be used to honor John Scanlon, a freedman who bought the former Remley plantation in the 19th century and sold subdivided properties to freed slaves, creating Scanlanville. This is a sketch plan of a park proposed for the site by Seaman Whiteside. The park was initially meant to be a memorial to the company co-founder Kenneth Seaman. This sketch shows the park being named after Scanlanville founder John Scanlon. Praise houses were generally simple, clapboard structures built by the slaves themselves. Meetings in the praise house usually occurred on weeknights rather than on Sunday mornings. The simple architectural aesthetic of the praise house mirrored the non-liturgical style of the slave religion. Enslaved Christians favored empty space over altars, kneelers, pulpits, and sometimes even chairs and pews. The resulting sparseness provided the slaves more room for ring shouts, often during all-night sessions of prayer and song. Frederick Law Olmsted recalled visiting one South Carolina rice plantation where the master had attempted to provide the plantation praise house with seats having a back rail, only to be informed by the slaves that this would not leave them room enough to pray. The pattern and architecture of the sweetgrass baskets heavily influenced the design. When creating a sweetgrass basket, strands of grass are gathered and coiled together in spirals that are wrapped by weaving material. When examining this process in 3 dimensions, the wraps can be seen to create golden spirals around the coiled grass bundles. The golden spiral is one of the sacred geometries that connect us to each other and everything in our world. It can be found throughout nature and in the ratios and proportions of the human body. The entire universe is believed to be a huge spectrum of circles. All life is weaved around cycles, of breathing in and breathing out, birth and death, day and night, and so on. Everything exists in one harmonious system, and the key to realizing and appreciating this unity lies in nature itself within the form of the golden spiral, also known as the divine proportion. Indigo, a plant that produces a blue dye, was an important part of South Carolina's 18th century economy. It was grown commercially from 1747 to 1800 and was second only to rice in export value. Carolina indigo was the fifth most valuable commodity exported by Britain's mainland colonies and was England's primary source of blue dye in the late colonial era. After the Revolutionary War, the British market for indigo disappeared, so planters needed a new product to grow on local plantations. Sea Island cotton, a strain of cotton unique to the Low Country, served as a lucrative crop for local planters. The silky and highly prized Sea Island cotton boasted extra long fibers that made the variety particularly desirable. Sweetgrass grows in the moist, sandy soil near oceans and marshes. Although nondescript much of the year, you can easily recognize it by its beautiful plumes in the fall, which eventually fade to white. It's harvested in the spring and summer by pullers who slip it from its roots and place it in the sun to dry, to make sweetgrass baskets. One thing that makes sweetgrass baskets special is that they aren't made with typical weaving techniques like plaiting or twisting, which are common in other parts of the world. Instead, Gullah artists employ the West African tradition of coiling. Dried sweetgrass is bundled together and coiled in circles. Thin strands of palmetto fronds hold the piece in place, and bulrush and pine needles are then added for decoration and strength. In 1685, a distressed merchant ship paid for repairs in Charleston with a small quantity of rice seed from Madagascar. Dr. Henry Woodward planted the seed in South Carolina, beginning the state's 200-year history as the leading rice producer in the United States. By the middle of the 19th century, more than 75,000 acres of land were producing rice in the Low Country, yielding 160 million pounds annually. By 1860, 70% of the 5 million bushels produced in America were being grown in South Carolina. Plantation owners demanded slaves from the west coast of Africa, where wetland rice farming was common. The West Africans cleared the land, built the elaborate systems of sluices and dikes, planted the grain with the traditional African heel and toe technique, flooded the fields at proper intervals, chased destructive birds away, harvested the rice by hand, wove the winnowing or fanner basket from bulrushes and sweetgrass, and carved the enormous wooden mortars and pestles for hulling. From sea to table, Carolina gold rice was the domain of the enslaved. Augmented reality is an interactive experience of a real-world environment where the objects that reside in the real world are enhanced by computer-generated perceptual information, sometimes across multiple sensory modalities including visual, auditory, haptic, somatosensory and olfactory. This experience is seamlessly interwoven with the physical world such that it is perceived as an immersive aspect of the real environment. In this way, augmented reality alters one's ongoing perception of a real-world environment, whereas virtual reality completely replaces the user's real-world environment with a simulated one. Bronze is the most popular metal for cast metal sculptures. A cast bronze sculpture is often simply called a bronze. It can be used for statues, reliefs, small statuettes and figurines, as well as bronze elements, which can be fitted to other objects such as furniture. Rubber sidewalks are a flexible, porous, eco-friendly alternative to concrete sidewalks, asphalt, and preformed pavers. Made with recycled rubber from post-consumer tires, these rubber sidewalks can withstand heavy rain by providing rapid drainage, making them the perfect stormwater management solution for green city infrastructure. Rubber sidewalks will flex with the growth of tree roots rather than crack due to root heave, an issue all too common with traditional concrete sidewalks. In addition, the porosity of rubberway allows water to penetrate into the subsoil where it nourishes tree roots below ground, encouraging deep rooting, reducing cracking and heaving, and making trees less likely to blow over in strong wind gusts. Rubber sidewalks can even be installed directly over tree roots without damaging them or hindering the tree's growth. This material would be used as the surface for the primary walkways in the design. Plastic lumber is a fairly new product made from recycled milk bottles and other similar containers and plastics. In addition to decking, it can be used in a wide variety of projects. It has several advantages over traditional solid wood decking, including extended longevity and resistance to rot. Plastic decking is also maintenance-free, maintaining essentially the same appearance throughout its life. Recycled plastic decking, unlike wood/plastic composites, is made from 100% plastic, eliminating the tendency of composites to break down over time due to the wood fiber component. Since it is a solid material, not layered, there is no blistering or peeling. Plastic wood is made with up to 90% recycled plastics. This is material that would otherwise end up in a landfill and does not biodegrade. Ashcrete is a true green concrete made with 100% waste materials. The dense matrix prevents deleterious solutions from penetrating into the matrix, so the mechanisms that can cause conventional concrete to deteriorate are not present. Consequently, these durability properties, as measured by permeability tests, freeze-thaw tests, scaling tests, abrasion tests, resistance to ASR, and carbonation, are significantly better than those of conventional concrete. LEDs are usually used as the primary lighting source of modern solar street lights, as the LED will provide much higher luminosity with lower energy consumption. The energy consumption of an LED fixture is at least 50% lower than the HPS fixture counterpart, which is widely used as the lighting source in traditional street lights. A lack of warm-up time in LEDs also allows for use of motion detectors for additional efficiency gains. The solar panel is one of the most important parts of a solar street light, as the solar panel can convert solar energy into electricity that the lamps can use. Living willow structures are a very exciting art form. They can be used for function, contemplation, play, barrier definition, and sitting areas. They can be simple as in the form of a fence or dome and as complex as an animal, human, and abstract forms. Large willow rods are pushed into the ground and then horizontal and diagonal willow components are interwoven to make a very strong fence/hedge. From an environmental perspective, the structure will absorb carbon from the atmosphere. It doesn't involve any factories or manufacturing processes and doesn't require any creosote or other toxic preservatives. In 1997, internationally renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma collaborated on a 6-part film series Toronto Music Garden entitled Inspired by Bach. For the first film in the series, which is entitled The Music Garden, the instrumentalist worked with landscape designer Julie Moyer-Messervy to interpret, through nature, the music of Bach's first suite for unaccompanied cello. Ma and Messervy approached the city of Boston about building such a garden in that historic city. The visual presence and organizing geometry of the golden spiral in the Toronto Music Garden was an important component of the final design proposal. The clearing is a proposed design for a public memorial honoring the 26 victims murdered in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings on December 14, 2012. The circular reflecting pool at the heart of the memorial will offer a place for Newtown residents to feel especially close to loved ones who have passed. The designers wanted to avoid listing victims' names and inadvertently creating a visual hierarchy. Instead, each name will be inscribed on the pool's border. Again, the strong organizing geometry of the golden spiral with paths leading to a central area surrounded by canopy trees was extremely influential in the design proposal. The National September 11th Memorial and Museum is a memorial and museum in New York City commemorating the September 11, 2001 attacks, which killed 2,977 people, and the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, which killed 6. A memorial was planned in the immediate aftermath of the attacks and destruction of the World Trade Center for the victims and those involved in rescue and recovery operations. The winner of the World Trade Center Site Memorial Competition was Israeli-American architect Michael Arad of Handel Architects, a New York and San Francisco-based firm. Arad worked with landscape architecture firm Peter Walker and Partners on the design, creating a forest of swamp white oak trees with 2 square reflecting pools in the center marking where the Twin Towers once stood. The linear pathways in the design, under a canopy of trees, were reminiscent of the original plat of Scanlonville and the highly wooded nature of the site. 3 concepts were created for the design that was ultimately synthesized into the final layout plan. The golden spiral concept was used as the dominating geometry through the site with the Scanlonville grid concept draped upon it. After analyzing the construction methodology of the sweetgrass baskets that inspired the Weave in the Woods concept, it was determined that at 3 dimensions, the weave could be viewed as a golden spiral and thus was already represented by the golden spiral geometry. Here is a side-by-side comparison between the originally proposed plan and the Praise House Park design. The Praise House design proposal celebrates the triumphs and battles of the community founders through its physical form and augmented reality storytelling. In plan view, the original Scanlonville town layout can be seen draped across a golden spiral that connects the entire site. The paths of the golden spiral are aligned with benches that have LED lights attached discreetly below their caps. At night, the benches project a soft white glow that illuminates the way to the heart of the design, the Spirit Circle, and Living Weave Pavilion. The Spirit Circle allows visitors to see and hear the voices of the site's past through augmented reality technology. Spreads of indigo, Sea Island cotton, sweetgrass, and Carolina gold rice enable visitors to physically interact with important agricultural elements of Scanlonville in the greater Charleston area history. Upon entering the northern portion of the site, visitors are greeted by a spread of Sea Island cotton and sweetgrass that frame the recycled rubber walkways. There is a bicycle shelter along with sweetgrass-inspired stainless steel trash receptacle that is placed throughout the design. In connection with the cultural history of the Praise House used by the Gullah people, the park is conceived as being a large praise house with a sculptural physical manifestation of the facade to a praise house on the south side of the design. The Gullah led a spiritual life that influenced every aspect of their being. Today, many descendants still believe in the dual nature of the soul and spirit. In death, one's soul returns to God, but the spirit remains on earth to live among the individual's descendants. This idea was also the inspiration for the augmented reality components embedded throughout the design. Upon entering the east entry of the site, visitors are greeted by stainless steel herons floating above a sea of sweetgrass along with the historical Scanlonville plaque subtly placed in the forefront. The 4 herons are representational of the wildlife of the area and are posed in different ways to express their elegance and beauty. The sweetgrass is a representation of the ocean and water, which are integral components of the history and ecology of the site. In addition, the sweetgrass is a physical manifestation of the historic weaving and connectedness of the land and people. Upon entering the west entry of the site, visitors are greeted with a view of the Living Weave Pavilion and a spread of indigo that draws you into space. The soft color palette of the plantings blend with the canopy draped in Spanish moss and create beautiful and ever-changing shadow patterns throughout the space. The Gullah and gold sculpture are representational of the importance of the knowledge and labor power of the West African slaves that cultivated and harvested Carolina gold rice that led to Charleston's leading rice production in the United States for 200 years. The sculpture would be augmented, allowing it to come alive virtually and tell his story to visitors. The tones of the bronze blend in with the warm glow of the landscape and create compelling shadow patterns that dance across the sculpture. In 1670, the English founded the coastal town of Charleston in the Carolina colony on land belonging to the Sioux. The Sioux or Islanders were a Native American tribe that was indigenous to the area. The town flourished from trade with the Sioux and neighboring tribes. The Sioux exchanged their deer hides for manufactured goods and beads from the English. However, the Sioux, who received only 5% of what buyers in England paid for their deer skins, felt that this business was unfair. Upon noting that the English ships always came in at the same location, they were confident that it was the direct route to England. They believed that by rowing to the point on the horizon where the ships first appeared, they could reach England, and once there, establish more profitable direct trade. Therefore, the Sioux nation decided to build a navy. Months later, the Sioux had completed their navy of canoes, and they filled the vessels with hides, pelts, and their most valuable possessions. All able-bodied Sioux men and women boarded the boats and took to the sea. Only the children, the sick, and the elderly were left behind. As the Sioux entered the open ocean, high seas engulfed their canoes. The survivors were rescued by a passing English slave ship only to be sold into slavery in the West Indies. The sculpture would be augmented, allowing it to come alive virtually and tell his story to visitors. The Gullah Owaman sculpture is placed in a bed of indigo and greets visitors near the heart of the design, the Spirit Circle. Owaman is the 19th century translation of woman in Gullah dialect and is representational of the cultivation of indigo by the Gullah people and contrasts the beauty of the plant with the suffrage of the people. The sculpture would be augmented, allowing it to come alive virtually and tell her story to visitors. The augmented reality component of the design allows for limitless opportunities to share glimpses of the rich history of the site, from virtual performances by James Brown, Duke Ellington, and Count Basie, to glimpses of the Gullah and Sioux natives brought back to life through modern technology to tell their stories. The design can create a deeper shared understanding of Scanlonville by allowing the site to physically and virtually tell its own story. Housed in the Living Weave Pavilion, the interactive digital kiosk allows visitors to add to the site's story through their own narrative. These stories can also be uploaded to the internet to allow them to be shared with people all over the world. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Please feel free to leave comments below.